Come on in, sit back and relax. You're listening to episode 213 of the WealthTech Today podcast. And I'm your host, Craig Iskowitz, founder of Ezra Group Consulting. And this podcast features interviews, news, and analysis all around the trends and best practices of wealth management technology. My guest for this episode is Rob Rickey, Chief Growth Officer at StraightLine Group, which is an RIA with over $1 billion in AUM that's based in Troy, Michigan. Now, Rob has over 25 years of experience in the retirement industry, most recently as head of advisor services at TIAA, where he played a pivotal role in bringing independent fiduciary advice solutions to individuals whose employer-sponsored retirement plans were at TIAA. We get into a lot of detail in this conversation. That was very interesting about how StraightLine had lured Rob away from TIAA and brought him on board to manage their retirement business. It's an interesting trend. We haven't talked a lot about retirement on this program. I know we have had Aaron Shum, the founder and CEO of Vestwell, on a number of times. But I thought getting more into retirement, we're seeing more RIAs get into retirement plans and launch retirement plans, supporting them. So I thought it'd be interesting also that since Rob had built a lot of the tech over at TIAA to support their independent advisor channel, getting this conversation seemed really interesting to me. So before we begin, let's talk about advisor tech stacks. So here at Ezra Group, we've seen the tech stacks of literally hundreds of RIAs. And I have to tell you, most of them are loaded down with tech debt. So don't feel so bad about yours. But let's face it, tech debt is like a giant anchor holding back your business growth. So if you want to free your firm and release it to gain exponential growth, you should run, not walk, to our website, EzraGroup.com, and fill out the Contact Us form on the homepage. Our experienced team can evaluate your current tech ecosystem, deliver targeted recommendations, optimize your existing systems and operations, even run an RFP and help you implement new software to take your firm to the next level. So please take advantage of our free consultation offer by going to EzraGroup.com. All right, a couple of housekeeping items. Please subscribe to the program wherever you listen to podcasts so you don't miss an episode. Also check out the Invest in Others charitable foundation, and you can find out more about them at investinothers.org. Now, let's kick this thing off. Here we go, our next guest. Let me introduce Rob Rickey, Chief Growth Officer at StraightLine Group. Hey, Rob, how you doing, man?
Good, man. Good morning, Craig. How are you?
Super fantastical here in New Jersey. It's all cold
Excellent.
and folly again. We had a great summery week last week in the 70s and 80s, and now we're back to the 40s, which is normal for New Jersey.
Well, I'm actually on Long Island, just
Yeah.
so you know. So I hope you got out on Saturday and enjoyed that 80-degree day that we had.
As a matter of fact, I did. Yes,
Good.
I was in the city on Saturday and
Awesome.
hanging around there. So we really enjoyed just sitting, walking down the street and just feeling the sun on my face for the last time for a while.
Yes.
All right, so let's jump in. Can you give us a 30-second overview of your firm, StraightLine Group?
Yeah. StraightLine is an independent RIA. We manage about just over $1 billion. The firm really has its roots in working with participants within retirement plans. So while we have a traditional investment advisory business, we also have a focus on managing assets in what traditionally would have been called held away individual retirement accounts in employee-sponsored retirement plans. So that's the really the history of the firm and the roots of the firm.
Yeah, and we're seeing more and more of our RIA clients expanding into the retirement planning market. But you have spent your career at some very large asset managers. What drove your decision to join StraightLine Group?
Yeah, I think, it was an interesting decision and a development over the last year or so. I spent, 25 years at TIA. I've been in financial services for 30 years. the crux of my career at TIA was really building TIA's independent advisor channel, which gave independent advisors the ability to work with participants in retirement plans. Quite honestly, it was way ahead of its time, right? It was really 1999, 2000. So, my whole thrust saw the trend around independent advice, was very entrepreneurial in terms of what I wanted to do, and really wanted to help people get advice by getting access to those independent advisors in the fiduciary model. Fast forward 22, 23 years, I leave TIA last summer. I start doing some consulting work. StraightLine was a firm I had partnered with while I was at TIA, so I knew them very well, had helped them start growing their business in the higher ed space, and saw the opportunity to really join them and get on the other side of the table, basically take what I was doing at TIA and opening plans to access to independent advice, and do that now from the RIA side of the table. So a little bit more entrepreneurial for me, being in a smaller firm. I was at the place in my career where I wanted to do something like that, and it's just an exciting time.
Congratulations on the move.
Thank you.
Excited for you as well. So you're, as Chief Growth Officer of an RIA, what's some of your highest priorities?
The first thing for us is setting StraightLine up for growth, right? So that means we're taking a look at all of our services, the technology we're using, our fee structure, our staffing, all of those things, to get to the position where we can start to really reinvest and rethink or modernize our strategy to grow going into 2024 and beyond.
All that makes perfect sense, considering you are the Chief Growth Officer. You should be focusing on growth.
Yep.
Recently, a survey in 401k Specialist magazine, only 67% of higher ed organizations retain the services of a plan advisor or consultant. It seems low to me. What are the other 33% doing? They're just winging it?
Yeah, it's funny. It seems low. It doesn't seem low to me, because I'll tell you, I think it's higher than that. You have to take a look back at the higher education space and the 403B space in general. It was very paternalistic, right? And for many years, even though now in the recent years with legislative changes, it's becoming more similar to the 401k market, it was very unique. So I think if you go back to the early 2000s, there was no consultant penetration in the space. So I think since the financial crisis, we have seen that market evolve in terms of consultants finding their way to that space. And I think what you've seen in the last couple of years, maybe that slowed down a little bit because of COVID and some of the challenges in the higher education space. There are some areas in that market where there are budgetary challenges given the changes in enrollment rates and what happened with COVID. So I think the trend is there. Matter of fact, if you looked at RFPs in that space today, they're almost entirely coming in 100% with a consultant on it, or an RFP for a consultant by those institutions. The other thing is, when you look at that rate, 67%, you really have to look within that number. How many of those institutions are the very large higher education institutions, mid-range size, that are following those higher education institutions, or the large $1 billion plus ones that are almost 100%, working with consultants. So it's the smaller end of that market that probably has less consultants, are starting to bring them on, but are also struggling coming out of COVID and some of the budgetary challenges they face with enrollment.
It's a complicated space. There's a lot going on there.
It is, but it's becoming more like 401k space. And by the way, a lot of the things that made it different are also starting to show up in 401k, like the access to guaranteed income is the big trend, right? Given the trends around Secure Act and all of that. So
the same survey showing here that it showed 77% of higher educational institutions currently offer a financial wellness program. That seems like a good amount. I mean, are you seeing more and more firms moving into financial wellness for their participants?
Yeah, I think financial wellness, is certainly a hot topic these days, and I think more and more plans are adding that, certainly in the higher education space as well. It's really at the heart of what we're trying to do in terms of our services as an RIA, right? We're focused on providing general education, communication, and advice services to plans. And certainly we feel like that there's an opportunity there to help those plans that have not gone there yet, and maybe help those that have done it and haven't seen the penetration or the results that they would like.
Let's talk fintech, Rob. On your platform and the StraightLine platform, and in your career, you've worked with a lot of different applications and providers. And you mentioned earlier talking about the retirement space. It's a lot of data aggregation. That's something we deal with a lot in our research on tech, is data aggregation providers and the data around that. Can you talk a little bit about some of the work you've done with data aggregation, some of the challenges you've seen that you've run into with them?
Yeah, no, it's a great question. I mean, so I've seen it from both sides. You know, when I was at TIA, I actually built TIA's data aggregation or their data feeds to be sent down to independent advisors who had clients on the platform. Because the reality is, you can't serve those clients or those advisors if they can't get the data. So data is critical. Whether it's your custodian or a record keeper, you have to have that data. So now on the other side, certainly we are dealing with data aggregation. At StraightLine, we have multiple vendors, right? So a lot of advisors just have one custodian. And that may make it simpler. But for us, it's complicated because not only do we have our standard traditional retail custodial relationship, we also work with multiple record keepers, and we have to get data from those record keepers. So working with a data aggregation system that can consume that data from multiple platforms and actually bring that in and do the appropriate mapping so that you can do the appropriate reporting for your clients, right? For us, we use that data from multiple platforms to obviously, give our clients access to those accounts, to view them, to do performance reporting, and to do billing critically, right? So it's really important that that data is accurate. And that has been one of my big learnings, is when you are working with any data aggregation system, you really have to take the trust but validate methodology, meaning, a lot of fintech talks about what their capabilities are. And until you start working with them, you really don't truly know what their capabilities are. And you have to really put the effort in to test the data as you're getting the data, and work with those fintech platforms to help them improve it over time, because it is not going to be perfect. Far from it, actually.
So you mentioned you're using data aggregation, data provided from the data aggregation vendors for performance. I found in the past that the data from many of the vendors really isn't clean enough for performance. Did you see that? And if you did, what did you do to resolve that?
I think I have seen that. And I think the most important thing that you can do as an RIA is you have to have somebody who understands the data. Because what's happening there is whoever the vendor is that's providing the data to your aggregator on behalf of you, right? They're sending down transactions on a daily basis. And the critical thing is, how does that data aggregator map those transactions in terms of their impact on performance? And the reality is, there's a lot of transaction codes, and those transaction codes have to be properly mapped. So if you don't understand how your transaction codes are being mapped, and you're not regularly looking at that stuff and talking to your data aggregator about enhancements and fixing that mapping, because they even change over time, right? You have record keepers. I know, even from my experience at TIA as a record keeper providing that data, sometimes our transaction codes changed. And if you're not actually going back in as the data provider and making sure it's mapping correctly as a buy, sell, or deposit, whatever it might be, it can have a negative impact on the advisor's data. So it's an ongoing battle to get your performance as close to perfect as possible, but it requires that type of work and dedication, looking at the transactions and working with your partner.
Indeed, it does.
You certainly can't just assume that they're going to have it right, which I think, unfortunately, a lot of advisors do.
Yeah, that's why Ezra Group gets hired a lot, is because we sit side by side with our RIA clients to help them know where the bodies are buried, so to speak, because we've worked with a lot of these vendors. So a lot of firms, instead of going through some of these issues, we can kind of guide them around it. But your point is valid. You got to look at the mapping, and you got to stay on top of the vendors. You can't trust them because they're all, I've seen that. I've been in the industry long enough to know everyone's trying to do the right thing, but
Yeah.
a lot of times it's not being done. The things fall through the cracks. As a vendor, they have a lot of other clients that they're working with, and they may lose track of what you're doing or not, or not. So you need to be the ultimate verifier and validator of your own business, your own data.
I think the other thing that's really important, I totally agree with that. And I think the other thing that's really important about that is you have to understand these fintech firms, they have great technology, but a lot of times they don't necessarily have the direct experience in our business, right? Like a lot of them are technology people, right? And they're learning our business while they built a platform to support our business. So I think that's one of the big challenges I have seen across the industry on any technology or fintech platform that I engage with and try to educate myself on to make an educated decision on choosing a technology platform. That is one of the biggest challenges I find. You could spend an entire year reviewing technology offers in a certain area of your business, make that decision, and suddenly you're 3 months into working with them and you're questioning your decision because they're not perfect. None of them are perfect. They all have challenges.
As someone who spends a lot of time talking to vendors, Rob, I can tell you they all have challenges. There's a lot of things going on behind the scenes. We see under the hood. All the demos you see are all pretty. All the websites are beautiful.
Yeah.
But under the hood, it's a mess. And a lot of these vendors got these issues. So keeps us in business. If the vendors didn't have these problems, they wouldn't need consultants like Ezra Group. So,
by the way, the other challenge though now, right? There's hundreds of them. Right. And so I think the biggest challenge for an RIA is how much energy do you put into the due diligence process, right? Because to the conversation we just had, I could spend 3 months, 6 months, or 12 months reviewing data aggregating platforms. And quite honestly, be in the same situation once I choose one of them. And I think sometimes you may be better off just making a decision and going in and understanding that you're going to have to work with that vendor to evolve their service, right, and their platform.
Yeah, one thing we tell our clients is when you're choosing a new vendor, it's like getting married, right? You're going to be with them a long time, right? A minimum of 7 to 10 years is most applications, especially the core, all the ones we're talking about, whether it's data ag, portfolio management, or financial planning as an example. And that's what I wanted to shift over to. You have just recently done a shift in your financial planning software. Can you talk a bit about that? Why you did it? What was the impetus behind it? Where you're going from?
Yeah, I think our intention in shifting to a new financial planning software was to really start to get to our strategy of more of a digital experience and an interactive experience with clients around providing a collaborative financial planning process that was ongoing, right? I think many of us grew up in the days of, hey, here's your financial plan. And it was like a binder. It was a beautiful packaged, piece with a lot of color graphs and all of that stuff. 20 years later, like that's not what financial planning is. It's really a living plan, collaborative, ongoing. And there are really very good tools now to take that to clients and to work with them. And in our environment, trying to work with participants in plans, we're trying to balance between providing financial wellness as well as holistic advice, because there are different participants in different points of their financial journey that need different forms of advice. And I think for us, it's a financial planning software that's collaborative and even potentially a technology around financial wellness that will ultimately help us bring our strategy together.
So what application, if you don't mind me asking, did you move to, and which one did you move from?
Yeah, we went from Naviplan to MoneyGuide Pro.
Got it. And mainly because of as you mentioned, the digital experience. Which part of the MoneyGuide Pro did you like the best?
So there's a couple aspects of it for me personally that I like. I love the goals-based approach that MoneyGuide Pro brings. I also love their blocks components in terms of the interactive piece that you can put in front of clients. The different ways that you can actually, depending on the client, how you can get them engaged in the financial planning process. I think you can go old fashioned with them filling out forms, You can give them access to the financial planning software to actually enter the data themselves. You can use the blocks and what's called the My Plan functionality to actually kind of let them play with it in a simple way, and then actually take that data and bring it into the financial plan to begin that process on the advisor side. So you can differentiate between someone just having access to the tool, using it themselves, and then taking them into a financial planning engagement with you as the advisor in a collaborative relationship.
With your financial planning software, can you talk about or provide some best practices or lessons learned when you were looking at your financial planning software and deciding whether you should shift or not? What was it that pushed you over the edge? Like, how did you get that? How did you make that decision? How did you get there?
Well, it's funny. It's ironic because we just talked about data integration, but in particular, MoneyGuide Pro, did have a data integration module with our data aggregator that we're working with. So that played an important point because it goes back to my early point. We were looking at all of the popular softwares, right? And had it really down to probably the three most popular today, and they're all great. I mean, right? They all have a tremendous amount of capability. So that's where it gets into really challenging to make a final decision. And I think, you got to just kind of go with your gut sometimes. And I think the other thing is you're going to find challenges in that integration. And by the way, perfect example of what we were talking about, Craig. So one of our big decisions was, wow, we could take our clients from a data aggregation system and bring their accounts directly into MoneyGuide Pro. Well, that was great. And once we started trying to use that, it didn't quite work like we expected it to work. Now, I engaged MoneyGuide Pro, I engaged our data aggregator provider, and we worked together and they fixed that. So, that's a perfect example of, we did all this, we took 3 months to look at these different softwares. You start scratching your head. It's like, they all have great technology. You make a decision and then you start utilizing it and you find that certain things don't work the way you expected. And you got to really kind of, work with your providers to kind of make that stuff get better.
Yeah, one thing I always emphasize is you want you don't want an adversarial relationship with your vendors. You want to think of them as a partner. We brought some people together, very large firms, very, very big broker dealers and their vendors, and basically put them in a room and say, you guys got to work this out. Right? We all work together on this. It's rather than the constant finger pointing, it's not going to help the business grow. And the business grows, everyone's happy, right? It benefits everyone if the business is growing. And that's where we really need to be.
It's a great point. And I will tell you that when I go into my relationships and my conversations with my data aggregator and MoneyGuide Pro, my position is, if I can help you fix something, I'm not only making it better for us, but I'm helping you be better to the market, to the rest of the advisor community. And that's a strength of a good partnership. And I think that's the approach I take when I'm working with them. It requires you to be willing to put a little extra time and effort in, honestly. But it's valuable because, one, they respond nicely to that, and they tend to, maybe put you in a better position as you need things fixed as well.
Absolutely. What client portal are you guys using?
Our data aggregation platform is Bridge FT, and we're using their Atlas platform to share accounts with our clients.
Got it. So are you bringing in data from MoneyGuide into the portal?
We are not yet. We are so a lot of this is new, and we are the portal is really specifically to view accounts, and we use MoneyGuide Pro separately for clients to view their financial plan as they come in, and we start to integrate them into the financial planning process. So they have access to both to view their accounts that we manage, and then the financial planning software to actually see their plan and use the blocks functionality.
Got it. Yeah, that's something we're seeing as well, that we're looking for the super portal, right? That everyone can have one portal for everything.
Yeah, look, there's a lot of platforms out there that are going to build, that are looking at the end-to-end capability, right, to provide that. So as a firm, we're not there yet today. I think, providing our clients with access to their accounts, providing them with access to, to their financial planning tools, I think, is working for us right now. That might evolve over time, right? We may look to integrate those things into a single stack, tech stack over time, but right now it's working for us.
Excellent. And with your shift to MoneyGuide Pro, that left a lot of your clients with the old planning software, plans created in the old planning software. Did you do one large shift, or did you shift clients over to MoneyGuide slowly as they hit their anniversary? How did that process work?
Yeah, that process is just starting, to be honest with you, Craig. But we have we've maintained the relationship with both softwares in an overlap to be able to address that and to work with clients as we transition with them and we meet with them.
Yeah, that's one thing that you can't convert. You can't convert old financial plans to the new vendor.
Right. Correct.
One of the things that our industry never has gotten a hold of.
No, it's a great point, and that's why we just made the decision to keep the access to Naviplan. And by the way, listen, like like I said earlier, Naviplan's a great platform, and there are other great platforms as well on the planning side. I just, but to your point, that it's a great point that when you make a change like this, you have to think about at least keeping the old financial planning software for 6 months to a year to be able to deal with those transitions and really use that as a reason to get in front of those clients that you had plans in the old system.
Yeah, and that is something we also recommend, and you're doing the right thing. With any product, any application you're converting, it always takes longer than you think. And oftentimes the plans we see don't include parallel operations of whatever the other platform is. Especially with your financial planning, CRM, portfolio management, there's going to be some overlap time where you want both systems running, just in case. This is a backup, and just also for verification, especially portfolio management, validating that your billing is working properly, all your numbers are right, before you shut it off. So that's
exactly.
Exactly.
Those are all things to your earlier point. As we think about our growth strategy, those are all the things we were working on today to put ourselves in a position to grow, right? So everything you just said, like we actually, I literally got off a call yesterday looking at our first, test billing run through our bridge system, right? And, it was good. I mean, there were things that we picked up on, but that's the process. You have to do that. And the other thing I would say is, you said it, like, it's progress. Sometimes it's slow. Progress should be slow, right? Sometimes with this stuff, because, you really do need to make sure things are right. And I do think the biggest thing I could tell any advisor is don't take for granted that your vendor tells you that they do something and that they, that they do it well. You really have to verify it. And that takes work.
Indeed, it does. Is there any technology you're looking at, you're evaluating now down the road to help your business grow, to help to improve? You haven't made a decision on yet, but you're thinking about it.
Yeah, we are. We're in the process. So part of the whole strategy for us is to really go back to our niche and our roots around providing, services within to participants within retirement plans. So we talked about utilizing that financial planning software. That would really be more for clients who need the holistic financial planning. We are looking at how to marry our services with a financial wellness platform. So we're looking at those technologies as we speak.
What would that entail? Bringing a financial wellness platform?
Yeah, for me, what I'm looking for in a financial wellness platform is obviously the technology that could be, that give the broad, scalable access to all the employees in a plan to do the basic financial wellness stuff, right? That really tends to gear itself towards, creating better behavioral habits for our individual, right? Dealing with debt, dealing with budgeting, right? Saving, all of those things. But marrying that with coaching as well, right? That's, to me, it's not just like you can have a technology platform and it can even leverage, artificial intelligence. But I think what we're finding is those systems don't get the penetration, right? The participants don't get the level of education that we all think they should. And I think that's because you still need the human side of that. And when you get down to the human side of it, there's two aspects to that. There's the clients that need coaching, which may be the younger employees. And then there's those individuals that are kind of more advanced that really maybe are 10 years from retirement, have accumulated assets, and really need more holistic advice. So for us, our model is bringing that financial wellness to get scale to address everybody's need, getting them coaching, as well as then getting them access to our holistic planning and investment management services if they need it. So it's marrying all that together in a package solution to bring to a plan sponsor.
That sounds excellent. I think if I was a plan sponsor, that's exactly what I'd be looking for.
Yeah, well, what I would tell you is I think I like to term it like the full spectrum of advice. And I think what happens is, because people are at different stages of their financial journey and they consume education and financial advice differently, you really need to have the full spectrum of advice that goes from everything from simple to target date funds to financial wellness to maybe custom portfolios, managed account solutions baked into the plan, to even holistic advice from independent advisors, right? All of that stuff, if you offer all of that in a plan, you have a better chance of getting more participants the education and advice they need. Instead of looking at them at silos, look at them as complementary advice offerings to reach a broader population within the plan.
Rob, I have a whole bunch more questions I wanted to ask you, but we are out of time. Where can people find more information about StraightLine Group?
You can go to our website at www.straightline.com.
Fantastic. Rob, thanks so much for being on the program. Really appreciate it, man. Great talking to you.
Thank you very much, Craig. It's been a pleasure.
Hey, it's Craig again. Here are my top 3 takeaways from this episode. Number 1, there's a growing trend of financial wellness programs being offered to retirement plan participants. StraightLine is building their own financial wellness platform, which with the goal of providing scalable, broad access to employees for basic financial education and habits, combined with human coaching for a more personalized approach. Number 2, data aggregation. Love talking about data aggregation. I know you've heard me talk about it a number of times with different people from different companies. It's such an issue. It's complicated. It's something we deal with a lot at Ezra Group, helping our broker-dealer and RIA and other wealth management clients sort of navigate through the maze and opaqueness of the data aggregation world. Now, StraightLine's data ag is more complex because they're also in the retirement business besides the wealth business, which means they have to interface with multiple record keepers. They have different data export processes that they have to support. So as Rob mentioned, there's not a lot of information on how to obtain that data from the record keeper, so they pretty much had to learn as they went along. That included issues such as mapping transaction codes, which can become a major headache if not managed properly. Okay, 3, financial planning. StraightLine recently transitioned over to MoneyGuide Pro from Envestnet, and that was driven by their desire for a more interactive and collaborative planning experience with their clients. The goal of this switch was to create a living financial plan that's continuously updated and engages clients more deeply in the process. Of course, they're trying to balance between providing financial wellness as well as holistic advice on the wealth side, because there's different participants that are at different points in their financial journeys, and they need different forms of advice. And there you have it, sports fans. You've reached the end of another episode of the WealthTech Today podcast. Please go to our website, EzraGroup.com, scroll to the bottom of the homepage, and sign up for our newsletter. Once a month, you'll receive an email chock full of wealth management goodness, news, information updates. You will not be disappointed. Thanks again for listening, and talk to you all again next time.